And we are live. So, thank you for joining me this afternoon. If we are meeting for the first time, my name's Matt Balfour. I am a wellbeing content creator, public speaker, and proud founder of a company called Let's Go Wellbeing. We help organizations to create more engaged, healthier workforces with a reduced cost of absence, and primarily that's done through enabling, empowering business leaders, managers, and employees just like yourselves to have more accessible conversations about mental. May 7th at 12:30 to answer your questions about mental health in the workplace. So again, currently we are live streaming across LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, maybe Instagram as well. So talking about over the next half hour how to improve mental health in the workplace. And specifically what's happened is that over the last month or so, I've had a QR code doing the. Okay, so it looks like we're back live again. This is to, should be on LinkedIn and on Facebook. Sorry, on LinkedIn and on YouTube, should be. But again, let me know where you're watching from. If the streams failed on LinkedIn, then switch to YouTube and vice versa. So I was explaining why we've done it this way today in terms of people submitting questions anonymously. So again, whether you've, I guess, ever wondered how you can reduce stigma when, discussing the experiences of others in the workplace, specifically when talking about mental health, or whether you're looking for ways to actually start a supportive conversation, and wondering what adjustments that you can make to foster a more inclusive culture. Essentially, this is your team's chance to ask questions about mental health in the workplace. So I've kind of put all the questions onto a bit of a slide deck and prepared an outline for some answers. And like I say, I'm going to be answering them live just now. So without further ado, this is the first question. So the first question here is as follows. It says, companies shout about mental health, yet expect workforces to work beyond their contracts, such as office workers working weekends or really late hours to get the job done. Yeah, that's a typo there. You haven't read it wrong. So really late hours to get the job done. How should this be managed from a mental health versus getting the job done point of view, with work-life balance being of the utmost importance to employees nowadays? Okay, so yeah, I think firstly with this one, we're talking about a bit of a reality check, actually, a bit of a reality check, because obviously if companies are saying that mental health, that they care about mental health of their employees, but they're still expecting their teams to work like late nights or weekends over an extended period of time, that's clearly not a sustainable strategy for team or company growth. It can lead to absenteeism, decreased performance, and of course burnout as well, which interestingly enough, that's if you're not aware of what burnout is, it's characterized by three things according to the World Health Organization. So we're talking about decreased professional proficiency, feelings of emotional and physical exhaustion, and also feelings of maybe apathy or distance from your job. But there was a study done with Deloitte last year, around this time last year it was released, and it was involving 3,100 plus employees, working age adults across the UK. And the results came back that actually 63% of them experienced at least one aspect of burnout, as I've just kind of mentioned there, including the decrease in professional performance. So the idea that it's an either or, it's a mental health versus getting the job done is almost it's a bit of an oxymoron, a juxtaposition, if you like. So coming back to the question, so yeah, firstly a bit of a reality check, and then like I say, it's not an either or. Because ultimately good mental health of your employees, of your team, of your workforce enables people to get the job done. So when people are focused, they're well, and they're creative, and they're more productive. That's what I'd say to that one. Also, as well, thinking about work-life balance as a priority, because you mentioned earlier, whoever submitted this question, that it's it's something that is kind of top of the list for a lot of employees these days, for a lot of team members, and ultimately, from my point of view, work-life balance isn't a nice to have. It should be treated like any other kind of core business metric. So, when we think about how much kind of attention that we give to production targets or even financial KPIs, the same focus needs to be applied to employee well-being. So when you think about how you apply that focus, I mean, think about the tools that we have at our disposal. Let's just say you're in a manufacturing or even a engineering environment. We invest in the right tools and conditions to get precise, high quality work out the door. So my question would be, actually, what tools or conditions are you putting in place to help your teams maintain that balance and protect their mental health? The other thing to consider here as well is thinking about non-negotiables, allowing time for people to reflect on non-negotiables. So, what do I mean by non-negotiables? Well, there was a workshop that I delivered recently, and we were talking about this question of work-life balance. There was a very specific exercise that we were doing, and one of the managers that were there actually mentioned that this was an exercise that he ran with his team, actually getting them to talk about their non-negotiables. Very specifically the things that they won't compromise on, be it family time, personal time, fitness, etc. And contrary to what he thought he was going to get in terms of an answer, he thought he was going to get kind of very rudimentary, very similar stuff from, let's say there was a team of 12. He thought he was going to get very similar answers, but there was a different thing or different things for each of those people that he asked a question to. And I think, well, number one, it can be a really good place to start in terms of thinking proactively about the areas of your life that you can make adjustments to get a better work-life balance. Because if ultimately you've got non-negotiables and then you look at how things are and actually maybe things aren't really aligned and you're falling short of those non-negotiables, that's a pretty clear indication of where you might want to start in terms of making a change. Okay, so the other thing that you can do here as well is, lead by example with things like the non-negotiables. Really what we're talking about here is setting boundaries and actually, honoring your own non-negotiables. It can set a precedent, thinking about the shadow that we cast, but also giving others permission to do the same. It's not about working less. I guess, to use a bit of a cliched term, it's about working smarter and about working better and actually protecting the people who make the job possible. So again, if you're not aware, this is the question that we're currently answering, talking about mental health versus getting the job done. And so we spoke about leading by example, personal reflection on non-negotiables, thinking about the tools that we have to make that happen, and also actually just having a reality check in so much as, mental health and, work-life balance should actually be a priority in the same way that, financial or sales targets are a KPI. It's not a nice to have. So moving on to question two. Question two is as follows. What have we got? What have we got for question two? We've got this one just here. Okay, so question two says that I am a mental health champion within my organization. And although the company from CEO down promotes mental health and wellbeing initiatives across the company, I get the feeling that local management see mental health champion, wellbeing champion work as not real work. And that's in this person's own words. So not something he's heard directly, or he or they or she has heard directly, but this is in their own words. Okay, so the question is, how can we promote mental health and well-being activities upwards so that our work is seen as value added? Okay, so we're talking here about how to show mental health work, mental health initiatives adds value. Okay, so a few things that you can do here, a few options, which is always good. The first one is, I guess, just thinking about your understanding of the problem in terms of the perception gap, because I speak to people like yourself up and down the UK on a weekly basis, talking about different aspects, different challenges related to mental health in the workplace, this being one of them. And I can say from my experience that you're not alone in terms of being a mental health or a wellbeing champion and maybe feeling like the work is undervalued or maybe not taken as seriously or prioritized by some of your peers or even local managers, and that's a double-edged sword. It can be hard because ultimately you're doing that work most times in addition to your normal job role, and even in companies where let's say the CEO, the chief, supports well-being, there can often be a disconnect a bit further down the chain for a myriad of reasons. But what can really help in terms of bridging that gap and forming a bit of a better connection and understanding thereafter is actually thinking about how you can speak the language in terms of speak their language in terms of business metrics. Okay, so typically, if you want management buy-in to something like this in terms of mental health initiatives, things that involve investment, you need to talk in terms of things that they already care about, things that are already kind of in their line of sight. It's not an addition, it's kind of already on the road that they're walking or traveling. So we're talking about specifically numbers, risk, and impact. So well-being work, and that's because well-being work is real work. It just needs to be framed, if you like, in a way that links to business outcomes, tangible business outcomes. So there's a number of ways that we can do this. Whether you're using kind of external benchmarks, leveraging reports from trusted sources such as the CIPD, or the Office for National Statistics, or even Deloitte, as I mentioned them earlier. So, for example, in 2023, 60% of all long-term sickness absence, so that's 4 weeks plus, was due to mental health issues. And that's according to the Office of National Statistics. Now, that's a national trend, not just a soft concern, as in, wouldn't it be nice to do X, Y, and Z for our employees, right? So, the other thing there is that you can also take that data as a baseline, but then also localize it. So make it a bit more specific to the use case of your business. Okay, so what are we talking about here? Well, if we said, for example, we took, I don't know, the cost of sickness absence, right? We wanted to make that specific to mental health. You could start with a simple calculation using your company's own figures. So there are 230 kind of available working days in the year, right? And let's just say your company has 100 employees in it. So that's a total of 23,000 available days, right? The national average of absence, total absence, across the entire UK workforce is 2.6%. That's public sector, private sector, non-profit, everything core considered. It's around 2.6%. And again, this comes from the Office of National Statistics. So that equals just under 600 days, 598 days lost per year. And if we took an average salary of 45,000, that's £173 lost per day. So if you multiply 598 by 173, that's £103,454 a year lost in salary cost alone in terms of sickness absence. That's before we get to accounting for lost productivity over time, or even costs to actually cover people that are away, or even the actual knock-on effects for the people that are left behind and actually have to pick up the workload for people that are out of the business. And again, you can, extrapolate kind of in reverse. So we know that, again, the statistics were that 60% of all sickness absence can be attributed to mental health. Now, there's going to be some businesses based on the industry and the demographic and maybe the part of the country that they're in that's going to be higher than that. There's some that's going to be lower. But again, from that data there, you've got some hard facts to basically make it a bit more relevant to your organization. So. Just checking now, where are we live at the moment? Okay, so you can also build the narrative. Okay, so thinking about the position of, think about how you position the mental health champions in the workplace, your work as a mental health or well-being champion as a proactive kind of cost-saving and performance-boosting strategy. So, for example, here's the problem that you may not have seen. This is you presenting it back to the kind of local manager or leadership. Here's credible data that actually shows the impact, and here's how we can act and how it benefits the business. Also, as well, when you're delivering this message, you want to remember that it's not about just kind of what you say, it's when and where you say it. So thinking about how you can position this message in some of in the most impactful way, and who you're speaking to about it. So whether that's in a performance discussion where numbers and impact matter, or even how you can kind of foster allyship in in or with departments that actually have more influence over how time and resources and money are spent. So we're talking about finance or HR. How you can create allies in those departments to help validate and elevate your message. Okay, so again, looks like there's some trouble with the stream. So if you're watching on LinkedIn or YouTube and one of them's gone down, just switch to the other one. It's Let's Go Wellbeing on YouTube and the same on LinkedIn. But that was an answer to this last question, which was talking about very specifically how can we, I guess, frame the message a bit differently so that we can get support from senior leadership with mental health champion, well-being champion work in the workplace, initiatives in the workplace. So the next question is as follows. It reads like this. As a company, we've had a recent reorganization which is causing people's workloads to go up at an unmanageable level. So, how can you encourage positive mental health behaviors when employees are struggling with unmanageable workloads, resulting in higher stress levels and people taking time off? How can mental health be supported when basic needs like eating are being neglected due to workload pressures? That's interesting. So, yeah, I think, well, firstly, you want to be acknowledging the reality because from where I'm sitting, it's completely kind of understandable that after a reorganization, a transformation, after there's been significant change, and if that's brought significant workloads or increase in workloads with it, that that's going to bring a higher level of stress. So the thing to remember here as well is that when people are in survival mode, when we become habituated to hypervigilance, a high stress environment, even basic needs like eating can sometimes take a back seat. And it's not a weakness per se. I mean, it can leave us vulnerable, clearly, but it's not weakness per se. It's more of a natural response to prolonged pressure. Sometimes you may hear this referred to as allostatic load. And what that means is when the changes in our environment start to outpace our ability to adapt, it can mean that we become vulnerable, which means that we can start to present a number of challenges or present in a number of ways, including but not limited to how we prioritize and manage our relationship with food. So as you may be aware, some people, you might be included if you're watching this, some people eat more when they're stressed out and some people eat less. Okay. So it's completely normal is what I'm trying to say. That's the first thing. Secondly, when we're stressed, it can have the effect of distorting our perspective. The brain, specifically the amygdala, can exaggerate threats and also drown out rational thinking. We become more accessive to negativity and less able to access positive experiences or long-term perspectives. Think about long-term perspectives. So with that in mind, it's even more important to think about how we make time for small moments of connection. So what am I talking about here? Well, firstly, it's the idea that we need to have these grand gestures if we're going to build connections with people, but actually that's far from the case. Just consistent human reminders that you're there can make all the difference. So whether that's a quick check-in via email, a casual how's your day going, or even an honest kind of actually it's tough right now and that's okay, can really help to diffuse feelings of isolation, negativity and fear that are common to us all at some point. And off the back of that, what you're actually doing there is helping people to make sense of their experience, because stress often comes from uncertainty. Helping people to actually understand kind of what they're going through can be grounding. So just applying a bit of rationale to the fear in terms of actually being able to label very specifically what is the challenge, where it's coming from, normalizing some of the things that they're expressing in terms of actually telling them it makes sense that for them to feel overwhelmed, and then offering perspectives on offering them options on how they can maybe shift their perspective, or even exercise a bit of control over that situation. So for example, here's what we can focus on today. You're breaking down what is perceived as a much larger problem into smaller chunks so that they can take control and manage their experience and diffuse some of that stress and negativity. The other thing that you can do as well is think about how you can increase your team's tolerance to uncertainty. Okay. So what do I mean by tolerance to uncertainty, and why is that even important? Well, in this always on, ever connected world, we've very recently become less and less adept at dealing with uncertainty, and more used to instant gratification. So through things like Uber Eats, through things like WhatsApp replies, the blue tick, the Netflix and other on-demand services. we've become less and less practiced at kind of sitting and just being comfortable with the unknown or elements of the unknown. So, encouraging reflection on how this can impact stress and also how we can build habits to improve resilience to things like uncertainty wherever it manifests, whether it's again with the blue ticks on the WhatsApp message or actually uncertainty in the workplace. It all exists on a spectrum. It's all uncertainty. So, a couple of ways that you can do this is by getting people to focus on their internal anchors of safety, the things that help them to feel grounded and also maintain a sense of perspective. And a really kind of quick win here is by actually helping people to avoid over reliance on constantly shifting external cues, things that are basically out of their control, whether that's the news or social media, what their neighbors are doing, etc. And essentially what you're doing here is helping people to turn the hour inwards and improve their ability to self-regulate in times of increased stress, such as the one that you've described in terms of the workplace that's going through significant change. And of course, it doesn't just need to be just talk or rhetoric. There can also be tools that you offer. Firstly, by leading by example with small but impactful practices such as breathing exercises that can help regulate the nervous system, which is directly responsible for how we handle stress. Thinking about nutritional guidance to actually help stabilize energy and mood, and also sharing resources that can help kind of normalize mental health conversations and also normalize mental health conversations and one of those or a couple of those that you might consider, you've got things like the mood elevator, the stress container, or also something like the pressure performance curve. And then lastly on this one, thinking about actually how you can kind of reclaim control through time management. So this is a simple one, but again, when we are kind of stressed or overwhelmed, very easy to forget that actually the time is the one resource that we can all influence. So, referring back to kind of, thinking about earlier strategies in terms of like defining your own non-negotiables, leading by example, getting your team to reflect on that and helping them to manage their time more effectively, practice more agency, even in a chaotic time. So that was question number 3. And question number 4 is as follows. So what have we got here? Question number 4. So the tone from senior management in promoting mental health and well-being has shifted. While they continue to mention its importance, actions don't seem to follow through. As a result, despite seeing rises in stress-related absences and visible consequences, behaviors aren't changing. So the question is, how can we encourage leaders to take mental health more seriously and drive real change? Okay, really good question. So again, the question here is really around influencing senior leaders on mental health and well-being, which is a really good question. And kind of links into some of the things that we spoke about earlier. I think firstly, it's you want to acknowledge thinking about that shift in tone. So it sounds or it seems like in this scenario that it's clear that the spoken support remains, but the follow through behavior is kind of fading, and that, I guess, that gap between words and actions is, I would say, especially damaging when stress related absences are rising, because it makes the issue visible but also unresolved at the same time. So I think what's also important here as well is that we still continue to turn the eye inwards and think about what we can do to kind of better understand the other person's perspective, whoever that might be, management, other team members, etc. So I say that to say this, we want to avoid assuming that things like, let's say seniority or age or resistance is always driven by any resistance to kind of changes or mental health initiatives are driven by, let's say, apathy towards the subject, or even, let's just say, an old school mentality towards mental health. Sometimes it can simply be a lack of education. If people don't know any better, then they're not going to necessarily do better or be inclined to do better. It could be just down to, actual comfort with the language around the subject, or even just a general lack of awareness of what's at stake. especially if they're kind of away from the front, away from the trenches, and not having to have those kind of real time, emotive, and uncomfortable conversations with people on a daily basis, such as you may have to do. And the other way I put this is that, just never attribute to malice, and this is really about just so you can, you know think about how you understand the other person's perspective. What's the reality for them when they're kind of making decisions or not making decisions. In this case, is you never attribute to malice what could be explained by a lack of understanding or ignorance. So again, when people know better, they do better. And here's the other thing as well. Leaders don't always have to be emotionally engaged with mental health. It helps definitely, but they do need to see it as a strategic investment. So this kind of comes back to the earlier point I mentioned about how we use language to frame a business case around our activity and why it's important. Time and money are the currencies of change. So if you are going to present a business case for some sort of initiative, think about what needs investment specifically, how much it costs, and actually what will the return be. So essentially, what we're doing here is building a business case. We're using hard facts such as absence rates, costs per sick day data, turnover data, and also dips in productivity to show financial impact, alongside soft facts such as anonymous feedback surveys, engagement scores, to really show how your people are feeling. And you can present this as a problem that you need leadership's help to solve, not a evaluation, judgment, or criticism based on the way that you think they're approaching their job, right? So again, present it as a problem that you need somebody's help. It's an opportunity for them to help you rather than a criticism as well. So framing and data really important. And then a few other things here as well. So thinking about presenting actually a range of solutions as well. So they want to be practical, but you want a range of solutions. So something that's kind of low barrier, some low barrier options, some that kind of cost money, and also some that cost time. This could be software tools, adjusted workflows, peer mentoring, training sessions, or even physical workspace changes. And that's important because crucially here, what is nothing without how. So thinking about when you're framing this conversation, not only the hard and the soft facts, not only the business case, not only the numbers, and making it as contextual and as specific as possible, but also thinking about the implementation, because again, what is nothing without how. So alongside how success will be measured, thinking about usage rates, how you're going to measure usage rates or uptake of said initiative, whether that's a reduction in stress-based leave or even satisfaction surveys, etc. And then last couple of ones on this one. So, I think also plan for longevity. So you want to think about, implementation, to think about the long term. Plan for longevity. So, think beyond that kind of one-off initiative, have a kind of an 18-month or even a 3-year roadmap, specifically at a strategic level, what is going to change, what are the milestones, and what does success look like? Because without this being clearly defined, even well-funded efforts, even if you do get the bag, let's say you do get finance to loosen the purse strings and actually, press the green light on said initiative, even well-funded efforts can fade into the background and lose momentum. Also thinking about reasonable adjustments as well. Because this can be framed again in terms of like, let's say the soft facts, in terms of it's a nice to have, it's nice to be nice, it's good for people and their mental health and all of the kind of the emotional stuff that we talk about. And then you've got the hard facts in terms of staff turnover and absence rates, but then you've also got the legal side of things as well. So when I talk about reasonable adjustments, it's actually the employer's duty. You do have a legal obligation as employers. And this isn't, to be necessarily presented as a threat. It is literally just the law. So a legal and ethical responsibility to proactively support well-being and help employees avoid injury, which covers both physical and mental well-being under the Health and Safety Act 1974, but also reasonable adjustments are covered in the Equality Act 2010 as well. So reasonable adjustments going to look very different from one organisation to another, but that could be flexible schedules, coaching or mentoring, new tools or platforms to support mental health, alongside training and education. So, what are we talking about here? Well, we're talking about the next question, which is actually question number 5. So we're motoring on. We've got 7 questions in total. This is number 5. So the question here is as follows. The question is, how can we effectively engage shop floor or factory employees with mental health and well-being initiatives compared to staff-based colleagues, given the differences in working environments and physical and also physical demands and schedule? Okay, so the issue here we're dealing with is reaching kind of shop floor or frontline versus kind of staff or office based colleagues. So it's a really good question because there are clear differences in terms of the working patterns. So with a person that's on the shop floor, whether this is like a care home environment or not maintenance, manufacturing or engineering, shop floor workers are typically in physically more demanding roles, work longer shift patterns, and also are typically standing for extended periods of time with typically less flexibility about how and when they do their role. Whereas office-based workers, they're often desk-based, potentially have some flexibility about working from home, alongside flexibility around working hours, and are under less physical strain. So it would be a good idea to actually tailor the approach, your approach to kind of the well-being initiatives, mental health and well-being initiatives for those people on the front line, to the challenges that are causing them the biggest issues. Okay, so maybe the focus could be on physical well-being as well as mental health, given the nature of the job. So consider practical and also physical solutions, whether that's something like energizing breath workshops for the morning shift, whether that's massages for the late shift, or even just thinking about regular opportunities to address physical and mental health needs of that particular part of your workforce together, given the limitations on time and flexibility. I'd say it's also a good idea to think about how you can create opportunities for open conversations, given the shift patterns challenges and also the difference in demographic with that part of the workforce. It's going to be very different usually to the guys that are in the office and more of the administrative function. So you can do that by offering formal and informal ways for factory colleagues to speak up about their concerns and give feedback. And that can be done through surveys for anonymous feedback, or even focus groups led by advocates who have a strong rapport with the team, and that can be a good way to encourage honest input. A few other things on this one as well. So thinking about how you listen and engage, tailor, and again, just kind of doubling down on the way that you can tailor mental health initiatives to their specific needs, on and working conditions. And if you're unsure, of course, just ask. Actually asking the question, like, what is it that you need to thrive? And you'd be surprised how simple a question can give you such profound and accurate insights into the challenges that are causing your workforce the most trouble. And it's a combination of these approaches that can, I guess, ensure that initiatives feel relevant, accessible, and also actionable for both factory workers, frontline workers, and also office based workers alike. So that was the answer to question number 5. Okay, so we are coming up to the last couple of questions now. So again, if you are getting value from this stream, I would love it, wherever you're watching from, to like, share, and subscribe firstly, but also you'll see that there is a QR code somewhere around about here. I think it's in the bottom left of the screen. So if while you've been watching, you've maybe had a bit of an epiphany, or there's a question that's come to mind based on some of the answers that I've already given, or the questions that I've been asked, and you'd like them answered live on the next iteration of this live stream, which is happening on June the 4th, simply scan that QR code and you will then be directed to the anonymous Google form where you can submit that question. And then, I'd invite you to join on June the 4th, so we can get those answered, hopefully. So, on to question number 6 now, I believe we're on. So, what have we got? Well, okay, so actually, I should share that with you as well. There you go. What are some of the best practices in mental health initiatives that you've observed in organizations without sharing specifics? based on your experience. Okay, interesting. Best practice in mental health initiatives in different organizations. So, several points here. And I mentioned this one earlier. I think overall it's about the long term approach. So, successful mental health initiatives or programs that I've seen are not about isolated activities, sort of flash in the pan things that kind of pop their head up 2 or 3 times a year and are, kind of delivered with um, the the goal of some kind of quick fix. Okay, they're part of an ongoing and comprehensive strategy. Okay, the best organizations plan for the long term and recognize that mental health initiatives need to be also flexible and evolve as well as time goes on. They're also data driven and contextual. So when we're talking about effective programs, they're built on both internal data, so that's employee surveys and absence rates, as well as external benchmarkers such as industry standards. Um, and they need to be contextualized as well. So they should align with real world data about real time employee concerns, real world data that represents employees' concerns, aspirations, and challenges. And another thing that works really well is this idea of shared accountability because we want to make sure, again, where successful initiatives are concerned, that ownership isn't limited to one department or person. um, in my experience, the kind of most successful initiatives have multiple levels of accountability from leadership to HR, all the way through to managers and employees alike. And this is an approach, again, in my opinion, from what I've seen, that ensures sustainability and engagement at all levels of the organization. Because, for want of a better phrase, everybody has got a horse in the race, some skin in the game. It's everybody's got a vested interest in seeing it succeed at multiple levels in the business. And again, clear communication and relevance as well, really important. So employees need to understand the purpose behind the initiative, like from the very start. It can't be something that you kind of start and then think, oh yeah, by the way, this is why we're doing it. Because if context isn't clear, they won't see it as a benefit. And if your team members, your employees feel that an initiative is an additional burden to their work rather than their working day, rather than the support, it can lead to a dip in engagement and maybe even contempt, right? Which isn't where we want to be. And the other thing as well is that great initiatives are never static. They are there's a contingency in them for them to evolve and move with the times. So regular check-ins and opportunities for reflection, again, across multiple levels of the business with different stakeholders to actually assess where it started, how it's going, and if there needs to be adjustment. Of course, going forward, we're not just blindly saying yes, this is a 3-year strategy, and we're going to kind of stick to it rigidly, come what may. So it can also help as well to kind of keep people updated as to the progress of said initiatives, which again will which again will help to build trust, but also reinforce the message that the organization is committed to sustained change. And last but not least on this one, I think it's really important when you're considering the most impactful initiatives that employees are given the chance to be part of something that's bigger than themselves. Okay, so think about the initiatives that can build legacy that extends beyond just the workplace, which can legacies that can help embody or foster a sense of community and purpose is definitely a good place to. It's a good thing good place to start, but also to factor in terms of the best mental health initiatives. So nothing specific, a kind of a combination of all several of those points, and probably a lot more as well. I don't profess to have seen them all, but based on what I've seen, that's kind of what lends itself to successful mental health initiatives. Okay, and moving on to our final question. So what have we got here? So question number 7. Question number 7, which hopefully you can all see. Yes, you can. Okay, so how can you support a colleague who comes to you with a major concerns or problems, especially if you don't have formal training in mental health? It's often hard to know what to say or do in the moment. Yes. Yes, it is often hard to know what to say or do in the moment. And actually, sometimes you may not have the answer, and that's absolutely fine. It's okay to not have the answer. Um, because believe it or not, when it comes to helping people kind of understand their experience, It involves a lot more listening. Okay, so and to that effect, sometimes just being upfront and honest about your kind of limitations can actually make a person feel a lot more comfortable. So we're thinking also as well proactively about how to create a psychologically safe space. So again, absent thinking about what to say, think about how to help a person validate their experience and create a safe space for them to express themselves without fear or judgment, letting them know that their feelings are valid and that you're there to listen. Just that reassurance can be really useful. And again, focus on listening, not problem solving, and it will make these moments, as comfortable and as emotive as they can be, a lot easier to navigate. Because ultimately, your role is not to provide, immediate solutions, and this is whatever level you're at in an organization. Instead, we want to be focusing on listening actively and understanding another person's perspective, helping them to organize their thoughts and explore their feelings by gently guiding them to reflect on, where they're at now, how they got there, and where they want to go moving forward, and more crucially, what support, if any, that they want from yourself on that journey. It can also help as well to think about how you diffuse negativity or diffuse urgency, is what I meant to say. Because if the person feels like everything is urgent or overwhelming, as sometimes that can be the case when we feel like we are kind of under pressure, okay, and things are kind of getting on top. Try to help calm the situation by reassurance that it's actually okay to take time to think things through, and just reassuring them that they don't need to have all the answers immediately can be really useful as well. And then, as and when the time is kind of appropriate, offer information that can help them again make sense of their situation or explore potential solutions. But again, don't try to direct the conversation necessarily in that direction or the other, because it needs to be on that person's terms. It's going to be, the idea here is that we're having a person-centered conversation. Okay, so again, in terms of practically speaking, what does that look like? It can include signposting resources such as, how to access an employee assistance program, helpline, support networks available both in and outside of the workplace. And to that effect, actually knowing how they can access professional help, what is the process behind actually accessing some of these, helplines can be really useful as well. Just kind of keeping that top of mind. So, whether that's HR resources, counselors, therapists, things like the Hub of Hope as well, which is the UK's largest directory of mental health service providers. So this is independent of any workplace, can also be very, very helpful. So that actually brings us towards the back end of this live stream, as I've been answering your questions about mental health in the workplace. So again, if you've taken value from this live stream, feel free to share wherever you've been watching from. And going forward, if you'd like to be sociable, then you can also connect with myself, Matt Balfour, on LinkedIn. Of course, don't forget to subscribe to the Let's Go Wellbeing YouTube channel. A couple of reasons that you should do that. Number one, the latest video is basically breaking down the upcoming Mental Health Awareness Week, the theme for which is community. So yeah, definitely get a look at that. And also, very recently, I had the pleasure of sitting down with Bertrand Stern-Gillett, CEO of Health Assured, which is the UK's largest largest EAP, employee assistance provider. And again, we're talking about what it means to provide support for and sustain a mentally healthy community in the workplace, for which he was and is well positioned to speak on. So that's coming very soon, again, on the Let's Go Wellbeing YouTube channel. So until the next time, also what I'd point out as well is, again, if you've got questions that you would like answered just based on some of the things that we've spoken about today, some of the topics that we've covered, feel free to scan the QR code that is just here, and that will take you to an anonymized Google form that will allow you to submit a question in time for the next iteration of this live stream, which is happening on June the 4th. But until next time, my name is Matt Balfour. This has been Your Questions Answered. how to improve mental health in the workplace, and your questions answered. And yeah, you guys have been amazing. I'll see you on the next one. Thank you.